You're tuning into the Active Mom Podcast with physical therapist Dr. Carrie Pagliano, a real mom's guide to all things postpartum return to workouts after baby. If you're a postpartum mom, coach, trainer, or physical therapist looking for answers on how to get back to running, CrossFit, yoga, Pilates, HIIT, you name it, without the fear of pelvic floor issues or doing something wrong, this is the podcast for you. Let's start the show. All right, I'm so excited to finally, I feel like we've been scheduling this for a long time, have back friend of the show, Shefali Christopher. If you guys don't know her, you should. She's a researcher and PT, super involved in pregnancy, postpartum, return to sport, running. You've seen her publications in a lot of different places over the last couple of years. And she's just always fun to learn from. So welcome back to the show, Shefali Christopher.
Thank you so much for having me. And thanks for dealing with life and schedule changes and all kinds of chaos. So I'm really excited to be back and chat with you today, Carrie.
Yeah. So let's start with life changes, because the last time we talked, you were working somewhere else
Yep.
and now you're at a different place. So tell us where you are now and kind of what you're focusing on.
Yeah. So I'm actually at Tufts University, and it is one of the few hybrid physical therapy programs out there. And just I was very intrigued by this thinking out of the box about how we can do physical therapy education. We all had to pivot during COVID times. And what we learned was actually that we could think differently about PT education. So, I spent 6 years at my previous institution, did a lot of exciting things. I felt myself ready for the next challenge. It was either that or just putting the gear in in coast, which that would have been a really smart choice, but that's not how my brain works. So we put it into third gear instead. And I'm now at Tufts University. I'm actually in charge of admissions. So
Mm,
a direct impact on one of my passions with diversity, equity, inclusion, because, in the PT profession, we want more of it.
yes.
And now I get to be on the front line, trying to not only recruit that population, but help them, through the admissions process and all of
Lovely.
that. So it was a different challenge for me,
Yeah.
but a really good one for life right now. And it just
Yes.
fit the puzzle nicely. So
Yeah.
here we are.
And we need that so desperately in PT. We're very white in PT. And then even in pelvic PT, it's getting a little better, but we're a lot of white women. And I'm seeing more diversity coming in, but I don't know that there's ever going to be enough.
Well,
So
and it's not only, racial diversity. We are our average age coming in is 29. That's my class.
wow.
Because it's, you have a career or you have a family, you can't relocate across the country.
Right.
You want to be a PT. And before, you may not have had an option or your family had to sacrifice a lot. But
Right.
now you get to maybe stay with you're the caregiver, or you just can't move because of your partner's job or something.
Right.
There's an option where you just leave 8 times in 7 semesters and get your PT education. So,
Wow.
accelerated hybrid, trying to make it a little cheaper, trying to make it a little bit more
Yeah.
accessible. And it's not for everybody.
Yep.
But it's for the group that didn't have an option before as
Hmm.
well. And that's the really exciting part of how do we do this and do it well? In COVID, we all threw 4-hour lectures online, and that doesn't work. Let me tell you.
No.
We didn't know what to do, right? On Friday, I was told on Monday, my class had to be virtual.
Right.
But, we have instructional design technologists who are looking at the slides and editing the video and, telling you how to do it. And so it's going to be exciting.
Yeah. No, I think opportunities like that, with all the bad that came with it. I know I practice incredibly differently now, but I also know that there was this huge, almost like aversion in our field to, if I can't touch somebody, I can't do my job, which I think is a load of crap, first of all. Because, I don't think it's about about this. I think it's about how you problem solve and how you think and how you listen and kind of pull that picture together. But I don't know, when you're teaching, you know, entry level PT and you have all these things that, you need to get into them and so on. Like, is that something that kind of comes through inherently now because they're learning virtually? Is that they have to learn to listen, they have to learn to kind of pull this stuff together a little bit better?
Yeah, and that happens because but also, like, you can go back and listen to a lecture, right?
Yes.
You can walk outside and listen to a lecture. If you
Mhm.
wanna be on the bike because that helps you, you know,
Mhm.
get in. If you wanna stop, go back, fast forward, like, it's just more, like, flexible.
I think that is an excellent point. Just coming off and you probably know who I'm talking about, a 4-day live online class this last week, which to me is like incredibly privileged because there's no way I could do 4 days straight. There was just too many other demands. I don't know how anybody was able to sit through the whole thing. And I also need time to kind of like sit and process. And if somebody says something, pause. Wait, what did they just say? And I remember in PT school, we had our anatomy professor of all things. She was, I went to PT school in Philly. She was from Boston and then had lived in New York for a long time. So her accent on top of anatomical phrases, I was like, I have no idea what you just said. So we would record and then play it back later and translate.
Yeah, no, that's definitely something that I think is, again, a plus if someone learns
Yeah.
like that. So,
Yeah.
and
No, I,
with the whole hands-on thing, we all had an eyebrow raised, but I'm learning more and more, the students, it's not like they'll come in without putting their hands on someone. Like, they'll have
right.
assignments to, like, find a landmark on
Yep.
somebody, right? A neighbor, a friend, a partner, a pup,
Yep.
whoever's near, like, find the landmark.
Yep.
And then, just like we do con ed, right? Like,
Right.
we go to continuing ed and we learn what, manipulations on Friday,
Right.
Saturday, Sunday. Now you're just taking all the lab time and smushing it.
Yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
my transitional DPT, I did mine through St. Augustine, so it was one of the very first to kind of do it that way. And I remember feeling a little fraudish at the time because it's like, "Oh, yeah, I'm doing my DPT online." And it's like and that was kind of, like, trashy in some ways, and now it's like, "Nope, that's cool. It's all
How
good."
innovative and cutting edge. How you wouldn't have
Right?
that at the time, right?
Oh my gosh. So with this new job, this new schedule, you also were trying out some new, workouts, this year. How's that going?
Yeah, so as we're moving into the next phase of life, exciting
Yes.
and body changes, I was trying to find, things that make my heart happy.
Yeah.
So I tried out some different local gyms and some different things, but I think I'm gonna stick with some lifting and triathlon training actually, because
Okay.
that's what works best for my brain.
So, just so everybody kinda knows, how old are your kids?
9 and 12.
Yes, because 'cause we're really close. Mine are 10 and 13, so we're literally just neck and neck there. Now, when you go into a class, are you able to shut your head off? Like, your analyzation, like, crazy brain, or are you able or do you go in and are you, like, super judgy? And there's no wrong answer here. Like, "What they said is wrong, that's not right."
I have grown a lot, let's just say that. um, and I think it just depends on how awful the thing in front of me is,
Mhm.
right? Especially the strength and conditioning classes and the cues that are given sometimes. I'm like, I have a
Yes.
better cue, but it's not my place. And I know how that feels when someone says something like that,
Mhm.
in an environment. So I just stomp it down, which, yeah, as you know, my personality is a little bit new, but it's out of respect for the person, and
Yes.
if they're willing to engage, because sometimes they are, and they're like, "Hey, Shefali, you have a better cue for this," and I've had that
Right.
happen, or like, "This person's having a hard time following. Like, what would you say?" And like, happy to join in, but also happy. I've actually also reached the stage where my brain needs to shut off. And so I
Yes.
can just focus on something else,
Yep.
uh, you know, because like it is my break, my mental break. Like,
Yep.
I'm one of those people who can't even write or run while doing a podcast. Like, I listen
Oh my
to
gosh.
pop hits
Oh,
and like I really need to be far away from like my brain working at
I
all.
love that. I love that. Okay, so who's on your playlist right now? Who are you listening to?
Well, I actually such a nerd, right? I like put it on 180 beats per minute for my cadence, and whatever comes, like, because usually like poppy, electronic
Yep,
dance music. So
yep.
I could probably not tell you who the artist is. I do love the little French EDM that pops in
Right,
between.
yeah. It's not
Um,
bad.
yeah, but I couldn't tell you who the artists are. I mean, David Guetta is one of my favorite.
Yeah, I'm a
Real pop.
fan.
Um, and then actually yesterday, I was like, let's do some Indian Bhangra. And that was
Okay.
fun too, to like just have a completely different like soundtrack playing in the background. I was doing some speed work and it was perfect. So
Yeah, yeah, no, I'm very similar. I'll have to figure out how to get the Indian Ponga in, but no, I started doing more kind of like podcasts and listening to books last year. But when I'm doing a speed workout, I can't do that. I've got to have just some sort of music or something, or otherwise it's just not going to go well.
sometimes I wish I could listen to something because like the to-do list never ends.
Yeah,
But at the same time, like I'm learning my brain needs like
a little bit of a break.
break.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. No, and I think especially probably because you're more in that research realm and you really have to be on and critical and whatnot. The books last year, there were so many good running books that came out last year. I was like, there's no way I'm going to get through them all without listening to them. And I think it lended itself to kind of like a nice environment. You're running, you're listening to, you know, Kara Goucher and Lauren Fleshman, and that was just like super conducive. So if more runners want to write more books, that would be great.
All on my list because I think if I did listen to audiobooks, those would be the one.
Mhm. Oh, they're so good. And I think Lauren's, I think when you're it's so hard to, I think, read authentically, especially about traumatic things in your life and that sort of thing. And Lauren's is just like I read hers or I listened to hers first, and then I did Kara, and I think Des was later, and then Alison Desir was in there, and they're all really amazing stories. So you'll go through it really fast, but I do speed it up.
Right.
I can't listen to things at regular pace anymore.
I think
I'm
that's
like,
why we get along so well.
right? I'm like, get to the point. Yeah, no, definitely. So like what does your week look like? So if those of you that have littles are like, oh, it's gonna get better someday. You and I are both in the shit right now, like literally in the shit. What does your week look
Whew.
like and what hats are you rotating in between?
Yeah, great question. So, I don't let's start with the day, right? So
Yes, okay.
Monday was actually a Tufts holiday because Patriots Day. So I
Right.
it was amazing because I picked up everything off my desk and I put it on the dining table because we have to eat at night and it has to be cleared by the evening. So
Mhm.
I'm proud to say only half the dining table is cleared and we've been eating outside on the porch instead.
We have our kitchen table and then we have our dining room table, which might as well just be like my extra office at this point and where everybody throws their crap when they walk in the doors.
But the desk looks beautiful right
Oh,
now.
good. Great job. Great job. Did you sneak in a little watching of Boston at all or no?
You know, I didn't. I don't. It was one of those days where I blinked and I was like,
Yeah.
oh. And I was hoping to get a lot more Instagram like updates, but not very many
Mhm.
people posted. So I
You
thought
gotta
it's
get in that algorithm. Like
mm,
if once I started to look for certain people, then that's all I was getting. But
yeah,
again, like the coverage is over so fast that
right.
like as soon as the pro women are done, like that's it. Like my brother and sister-in-law live in Boston and they live very close to the course.
Mm,
So I got like a picture of like my little niece with like the huge group of women pro runners at the front of the pack. I'm like, okay, that's great.
yeah, a local runner
Yeah,
who I know. So it was fun. I did follow some of her stuff, but
awesome.
I was actually traveling over the weekend too. So Monday was one of those like get back in the zone.
Yep.
Um, yeah, I was actually this is exciting. If you're talking about my hats, I was in Colorado Springs with the paratriathlon
That's
team,
right.
and they were in the velodrome testing
Yeah.
their equipment for Paris,
Uh-huh.
for the dynamics and fit and stuff like that. So that was
That's
exciting
awesome.
Friday, Saturday. But one of those like got everyone to school Thursday, got stuff organized, and then like darted out, got my flight. One kid
Yep.
was at someone's house and had their soccer backpack. The other kid was getting on the bus and had their uniform like laid out on the bed.
Yep. No, that's key. Like our kids have a different, and I know this sounds excessive, but once you realize the beauty of it, it's gorgeous. They have a separate bag for each
Yeah.
sport.
Yeah.
You have to.
Right.
And then the other trick is to look ahead and see what sport is coming and make sure their shoes are going to fit, make
Yeah.
sure that their suit is going to fit, like make sure that like their helmet's going to fit, like mouth guard, like all of that stuff. And we are in that phase now where like they're in a different shoe size like every week, I swear to God.
Yeah. I even actually, after I do laundry, put the uniform in the bag so that
Mhm.
the
Yep.
soccer jersey is not mixed up with the baseball jersey with the
Right.
um and that's been helpful to be like, all right, your socks, your shoes, your shorts, your shirt,
It all
everything.
has to be together. Yes, exactly. We got a little tricky. We have a rec basketball over the winter, and both my kids play, and it's the same jersey. It's like white on one side and blue on the other. But my 13-year-old is much larger than his little sister, and we cannot mess those up because if she throws that on, it's just going to be a dress. And if he tries to get it on, I don't think he's going to get it over his head. So that's the one where we have to be like super sure that it's the right stuff. But otherwise, we don't really have too much overlap with like swimming and stuff. Obviously, very different suits and things. So,
Yeah, yeah.
yep, yep. Okay, so are you going to Paris?
I am going to Paris. So yeah, yeah.
Yay!
It's not like announced yet, but yes,
Okay,
I am going to support the team.
yay! Now, is
Now
that going to be what is it? When are the Paralympic Games? Are they like late
August,
July or August? Okay,
August, September. So
okay,
Paratriathlon will race September 2nd, 3rd.
okay.
So yeah, exciting. So
Oh, that's awesome. So you're already thinking ahead, who's gonna take care of my kids over Labor Day?
well, we are thinking of actually bringing them
You should.
because
You should.
this is a once in a lifetime
Yes.
opportunity. I don't know what's going to happen in 4 years,
Yep.
but I think it's important for them to see what mom does.
Yes.
It's important for them to see Paralympic athletes.
Oh my gosh, yes. They can
So
miss school for that. Totally. And I hopefully, and if they are mad about it, your school can just deal with it.
I'll make them do a project or something along
Right,
the way.
exactly. Like, we'll learn French, I promise.
But yeah, they're already asking, can I go to para gymnastics? Can I go to para, soccer? So it's great to,
That's super
have
cool.
them that be normalized, right?
Yeah.
Like unlike how we grew up.
Right.
So
Exactly. Exactly. Okay. So you've cleaned off your desk.
and
How many
then
sports were there that day?
um both baseball and soccer. So we
Okay.
were split in different directions. And so
Yep.
then the hysteria starts of like, does someone need to be picked up or can they get home on bus?
Yep.
Like shuttling everybody everywhere. And that's pretty much how the weeks go. The mornings are usually a mix of research, doing admissions stuff, getting ready for teaching, and
Yep.
then the afternoons and a bunch of meetings, of course.
Yeah.
And then the afternoons are just like take a deep breath and let's
Chauffeur.
go.
Yeah. No, it's like a totally different job. You have to be in a very different headspace for sure.
Right.
Um,
And
so in
yesterday, we had builders coming in at 2 o'clock because we're hoping to my parents spend more time with us. And
oh,
so
good.
putting a little bit more space on our house so we don't just like fight all the time.
Right. I think that's fair. I think that's fair.
But they came, the kid had to be picked up and taken to guitar. The other kid had to be picked up. So my husband got a sub because he's a high school teacher. So
Mhm.
he helped me. And I was here, talking to the builders and like my
Yeah.
husband. And he came home. And I swear he looked so disheveled. And I was like, how did that feel? And he was like, oh my goodness. Because when he gets home at 5, I'm like, I don't even know what I've done from 2 to 5 because I've
No.
just been like,
No.
managing it. And so it was nice to feel appreciated and for him to have a minute of, just
Yes.
complete chaos. And it's just, everything lines up perfectly, but you're on
Mhm.
the go till from 2 to 4 till you get home, right?
Right? Well, and that's I think they just don't realize it. Like my husband's in consulting and works West Coast hours. So like he doesn't really see it because he doesn't really come down until later.
Right.
And it works out in the mornings because if I come in early to the clinic, he can get them to
Mhm.
school and that kind of stuff, which is
Right,
great.
right.
But he went away, I think it was like 2 weeks ago or something. And there was like he does like two things that he organizes that I don't do. And he's like, "Can you handle it?" I'm like, I just laughed. I'm like, I've been handling it since I don't know, 13 years ago, like getting a child into like infant swimming in Arlington, Virginia, you have a better chance of getting Taylor Swift tickets. Like, I'm just going to put that one out there for what it is. Like, sitting there, like getting online at 7 a.m. to get them in the class. You watch the Wheel of Death, you scream, 1,000 screams. Like, I know how to do this.
Yeah, I got this.
It's a skill set of mine now.
But I'm getting very Southern in that I'm like, bless your heart. Bless your
You're
heart.
so funny. No, you can't. You have to shut your mouth. Like, no offense to any dads that are listening, but like, it's just we make it look that easy. And that's why, again, for him, it's my daughter is so funny. Sorry, honey, if you're listening to this. Um, which he's probably not, but she's like, "Mama, when you leave, I get really sad. And I don't know what to do because there's so much that you do." And I was like, "Thank you, somebody, for noticing." She's like,
Right.
"When Dada goes, it's fine because we're together."
Yeah, and that's why I like encourage moms to take a break because like
Right.
we do a lot and we're a huge piece
Mhm,
of their like it's important for them to miss us and
mhm.
appreciate it too. So,
But it's
but
it's this weird sometimes I feel a little bit torn with it too because we do have some roles in our house that are slightly patriarchal. Like I hate meal planning. I hate trying to figure out what to make for dinner. It's like the bane of my existence. And you even if you spent all this time making this beautiful dinner, they'll be like, I already ate, like stupid things like that. But like some of it too, like I like being able to be the chauffeur. Like I enjoy being able to, watch their games and do all that stuff. So it's this fine line between detesting meal planning.
well, Brian, my husband loves to cook and loves to do all of that. So
Okay.
I just quietly retreated from that job. I'm like, you go
My
for
my
it.
Brian used to this is why it's so helpful in the 70s that everybody named their kid Brian because remember everybody else's husband's name. I have like 5 friends, their husbands are Brian.
It's super.
He cooked after like right up until the time we got married and even a little bit after. And then I don't know where the hell it went.
Maybe you can be like, hey, I'm really missing that, pasta you used to make.
Right? No, but, like, occasionally
Right,
he'll get, like,
right.
this urge to, like, bake bread with, like, make and then it's this whole thing, and I'm like, "Just make the freaking bread." Like, it doesn't have to be this, like, "Look,
You
I made the bread."
you do have to give up some things, and I've learned over the years that the
Yeah.
pros are
Mhm.
worth the cons. So
Mhm. Yeah, no, but again, there's a little bit of a hole in your tongue. So where in all this do you and I've been getting this question more lately.
yeah.
I think moms that are like really in it and they're like, okay, when am I ever going to figure out a time to work out?
Mm.
How has that changed for you? Like, where are you now? And like, was that harder before? Is it easier now? Kind of like talk to that a little bit.
Yeah, so I think when they were, like, little and needing, like,
Hmm.
full eyes on
Yeah,
them, they run into the coffee table if you take your eyes off for a second.
totally.
That was probably the hardest time, right?
Yep.
Because someone had to be 24/7
Hmm.
watching them. So I think that those years when they were probably what 3, 4, 5 and
Yep.
under,
Yep.
that was the hardest to get exercise in.
Hmm.
Um, and I think the ways I got around that is, trying to have more realistic expectations because then you're in your head about like, oh, I haven't done this hour long run.
Right.
What does that look like in that stage where it looks like maybe trainer or stationary bike if they
Right.
don't put fingers in the cogs
Right.
or maybe doing more like floor strength and helping them be part of it.
Yeah.
Uh, so that's what it looked like in that stage. And now I feel like we are at the stage where, you know, I can put someone in front of the TV or they could be playing outside or just like it's not a 24/7 or they could have a friend over and then they're like set.
Right.
So we
Exactly.
finally or like just someone can be home and the other person can be gone. So
Yep.
I think I'm finally seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. And it's 9 and
Mhm.
um
Right.
So now we navigate the sports schedules and like, how do I get my stuff in?
Yep.
Um, and that's probably the hardest navigating, because the driving, the prepping, the
Yep.
feeding everybody before and after, I think that's the stuff we're navigating, versus like someone needs your total attention.
Right. It's a lot of logistics at
Yeah.
this point, and inevitably somebody has to be at one side of the county and the other person has to be at the other side.
Like, 45 minutes of driving,
Right.
and they're like, okay, like that's could have been my workout time. So
Right.
the biggest struggle I have right now is I do a lot of good research first thing in the morning. So even this morning,
Ah.
5:30 in the morning, like I got a to-do checked that has taken me weeks to sit down,
Mhm.
have the mental space.
Yep.
That hour in the morning, first thing, fresh, the quiet
Yep.
around me,
Yep.
um, used to be the best time to work out before the kids woke up. But now I'm swapping it. Like yesterday, I ran at like 4:30 while
Mhm.
one kid was walking the dog, one kid was at a neighbor's house, and Brian was getting home and starting his own workout. So that's kind of the stage we're at.
Yeah.
Um, and so moms, it does change. It'll change in different capacities.
Yeah.
Um, but I think like the one thing I would say is definitely ask for help.
Yeah.
Uh, your exercise will make you a better mom,
Yep.
from mental health, physical health, caring for yourself. And
Yeah.
so, if you can lean on that gym that has the childcare, if you can lean on
Yeah.
a neighbor who will trade childcare with you,
Yep.
anything where you can get the support, even if it's 30 minutes. I think that's really important
Yeah.
for everybody's physical and mental health. And I'm really intrigued, Carrie, about the this lifespan stage being a make or break for your health,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's one of those, like, just like when you go off to college and you have to figure out, okay,
Right.
no coach yelling at me to exercise. I know it's good for you. I have to like figure out how to
Yep.
fit that in. Like this, I think postpartum and
Yeah.
caring for somebody else is one of those time periods where if you don't get in the routine, maybe your physical activity will look very different.
Yeah.
So
I think
like,
that's a great analogy because I very much remember going to PT school right after high school. Mine was like a 5-year straight through program, and remember and thinking like, "I don't have to run because
yeah,
I didn't have practice and no one has to tell me what to do." And then I eventually, freshman 15 and all, um, but I just didn't feel good. I didn't feel like myself, but it was a conscious choice to go back and figure out how that worked.
right.
But I love that analogy. I never thought about it like that before.
Yeah. And so like that's my biggest, like how do we do better for the moms? Uh,
Mhm.
they don't need us to tell them what to do. They need support. So like how do
Yeah,
we provide the support, or like, here are some resources, or here are the gyms that have childcare, or
right.
different things like that. And getting that physical activity piece is key. So
Yeah,
that's my like where my brain's going next. Like how do we support?
yeah.
Um, and give them the tools and let them decide, like,
Mhm.
great day, I want to do a 30-minute workout here, I can go here, I can do this.
Yeah.
um, and then or today's just one of those days where
Right,
I'm going to do some yoga and someone's going to
right.
climb all over me between
And
the dog
it's
and the
Yep.
child.
Yeah,
Everybody.
it's not gonna be perfect, yeah. No,
Right.
I think that's an area that totally gets missed in conversations with moms because, lots of times, especially the first time around, I think. Second time, I think you know a little bit better by that point, but if you're lucky enough to have a couple months of maternity leave and you start to figure things out, maybe you go to a mommy and me class, and you're like, "Okay, I got this." And then you have this assumption you're gonna go back to work and everything's gonna somehow get figured out. I'm like, "No, we gotta walk this stuff through." And lots of times I say to moms, and I kind of fell victim to this myself. I'm like, if I'm not working, I can't be paying for childcare. And so I think I was done with work. I worked like 7 to 3:30 or something like that when my son was born. And I was like, as soon as I could get my notes done, I would run home and then the nanny would leave. And then I got smart and I was like, well, she can stay a little longer. And then I would like, even if it's just like to go to Target by yourself is like this whole like spiritual experience. Or just to go for a walk or go get your hair cut or just like can you build that? Can you build an extra hour into childcare that's already there? And people don't think about that. And I was like, no, you're going to want to think about how you can get it in through your day. Because if you think, oh, I'm going to do it as soon as I pick up my kid and go home, you're not. And you're
Right.
also picking up a grenade that may or may not blow up.
Well,
Which
it's
I think still happens now. Like,
oh yeah. And the mom guilt, right? Like they've been with
oh,
somebody else from 7 to
right.
3. Like, as you're saying this, like I'm having anxiety about for an extra hour. My children don't even go to a daycare
Mhm,
anymore. But that whole like, oh gosh, like
mhm,
that's more hour with not me, and like I
yep,
miss them, but I also have this thing to get done. So
right,
recognizing that like
yep,
it's there, it's real,
yeah,
and some days it might feel good to just go home because it's less anxiety
yes,
provoking, but some days
yeah,
you have the
yeah,
green flag,
totally,
like the support to take care of yourself, because then you actually will be amazing at being patient with,
right,
because you've had moments
exactly.
for yourself. So
No,
yeah.
and I love what you said kind of about that golden hour in the morning. Like, I genetically come from a people that we get up early ass in the morning and do stuff. My husband is not. Um, and so like that's also where I get a lot of my writing done. I have my, ideas and things like that. And what's really hard is that's also the easiest time for me to get a workout in and to go
Yeah.
to the gym because there's no traffic to get there. Parking is easy. I can get in, I can get out, I can get home before anybody's awake. Like I can get a run in, get back home, nobody's up yet. Like it's so hard. I wish I could like have 2 of those in the morning, but I can't. So then you have to choose.
I know. Or you wake up at 3, right? You just shift your day.
We're not there yet. I kinda have a hard line at 4:40, so we can't go any earlier than that. Because at
And
this rate, I go to bed so early.
well, and that's the thing, right? We're in that stage where like we have baseball games till 9 p.m. So
Yes.
like by the time you wrap up and give everyone their like snack afterwards, like
Mhm.
no way you can get up at, oh dark 30. So
Yeah.
it's just a life stage, and I take
Yeah.
taking each day as it comes.
Yeah, no, the I pray to the weather gods that on the nights that, like, next Monday, my daughter has a game that's, like, 7:30 to 9, and they've got lights. Yay, lights. And I'm like, "Come on, let's have a storm. Come on." But,
I'm
like,
with
with
you.
field hockey in the fall, they're on turf, so
Right.
no one cares, and then there's basketball that you're indoors, no one cares. Swimming, we pray for lightning.
Right.
Um, so, yes, I do pray to the weather gods
We do
sometimes.
hockey, and it's like I'm like
Right,
that's happening no matter what.
right.
But
Yeah.
I don't mind hockey because there's a start and end. It's the baseball that's like feels like
Yes.
so
Yes.
I do a lot of rain dances and hope
Yeah.
for
Yeah. No, with practices, I will usually go walk the dog, but now we've got like 2 games a week with softball, and I went through this with my son. He played baseball right up until, right through 5th grade, and, they can be really fun to watch, and you can get really into it, but you're sitting there for an hour and a half,
right.
2 hours, and you're like, "Oh my god."
And then that's the evening is done. Like
It's
there's
done. No, it's done. It's done. It's done. And I know I was talking to my daughter about this. I was like, "Okay, we've got a late game next Monday. You've gotta have everything ready to go for the next day before we leave. Like, it's gotta be all set. Coffee's gotta be, made ready for the next morning. Bags packed, lunch is done." Like, it's all that extra planning to make sure that the next day you're not starting, like, with a dumpster fire.
right.
So,
And that's why
yeah.
the other reason like this job works amazing because
Yeah.
it's hybrid, and I can, throw in some laundry between meetings,
Right.
put something in the oven if needed.
Yep.
And I think that at the end of the day, all of us as moms just need flexibility. So,
Yeah.
how do we get that the best we
Yep.
can so that we can hold everything up barely, keep the balls in the air?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. But I think I don't know that I realized I kinda thought that you just got through it those first couple years and then it just got easier, and it's just it's you almost kinda wish for those days that it was just, a changing diaper or a nap or something. Like, it was very, very simple what it was then and what it is now. Yes, we've got logistics sports and stuff, but, like, we're talking about, like, high school courses with my son next year, who's going into 8th grade, because that's when they start here, like their credit classes. I'm like, oh my God, we're thinking about this already. And then all of a sudden, the time frame where you have with your kids just got like cut off. You're like, wait a second, like there's an end to this, and it's coming up really, really fast.
And that's the justification when like I'm like, oh crap, I missed this run. I didn't time my day properly. I'm like, yeah, but in 4 years I won't have this problem. And so I'm going to enjoy it right now.
Yes.
Right.
I've been saying that to myself lately where like, yeah, it's annoying to sit and, go out all these practices and doing this, but like, and this is what I'm hearing kind of from the other end is like, you're not going to have anything to do and you're going to miss that. And I feel that with my, here, baseball's super weird. Basically, once you get to a certain age, you have to be at a certain level and you can't play rec. And my son's just not that, and that's fine. But like, I look back and I miss that because it was like all of our elementary school parents, like we knew like the kids played t-ball since like kindergarten together, and it was so cute. It was so fun. And the coaches were great. And I'm like, that's done. It
Right.
was like in a flash,
Yeah. And they all say, everyone says that, right? It'll go by so quick. And now you're like, oh, it's coming. So, also having patience with yourself there. Like, I like to say, look, this is just the lifespan stage.
Yeah.
And we got to embrace it for what it is because it's going to change and, take it as.
I think the part that doesn't make sense is in my head, I'm still 13. So it's like, how is this possible that I have a 13-year-old? Because in my head, I still feel that way. So I don't know.
Although my body doesn't feel 13 when I wake up in the morning, I'm like, oh, is this what 40 does to you? Like poof, like suddenly you hear it again, like people have told you.
I don't know. I don't know. I'm just so freaking thankful. I think just because I've been through so much stuff physically, I'm just so freaking thankful to get out of bed in the morning that I'm like, something's going to hurt. I don't know what it is today, but like, I'm cool with that. Like,
you'll love this story. So, I've had this like hip back thing for a while. And as a PT, I'm like done a few things. It goes away. And then I do something silly and it comes back. And so I finally said like, okay, Shefali, like you have to stop thinking about it and you have to go see a PT because that's what you would tell your patient. And you got to spend money. So I go to one of my former students who's just phenomenal. And remember we talked about turning your brain off? Like I trusted it so much that I could just turn my brain off. But you will love this. So we're going through the things and he's like, so talk to me about your pelvic floor. And I was like, excuse me? Because I'm a male student. I was like, I'm not telling you about my pelvic floor.
I'm here like clapping.
So then I take a deep breath and I'm like, okay, like, yeah, if I'm good, it's good. If I'm not good, it's not good. Like blah, blah, blah. He's like, do you think that could be related to your hip and your back? And I'm like, no, like it's not.
It totally is.
And the more I freaking think about it, I'm like, I am the provider who tells people, all of these things. And so I thought you'd appreciate the story that I did send him a message and say, good job asking the question. And although I hate to admit it, I think I do need to get a pelvic valve and good job for asking it. And I'm glad I taught you that.
You're like, old me is gonna be like, very happy, and current me just needs to get over it.
So now I'm gonna have to, do all of that. But I thought you'd appreciate that story.
I love it.
I was like, darn it! Like
it's such a PT thing though. Like I've got a calf thing going on. It's weird. Like it just dead center of my calf started literally the first like quarter mile of the trail race I did like a month ago. And I remember when it happened, I was like, oh, that's just weird. And then the week after we were on spring break, I was in flip-flops the whole week, hadn't been that. I was like, oh, it'll just go away. And then it's been off and on. And I've been the same way. I was like, I just need somebody just like, because I've tried a bunch of things and I was like, you know what? I just need somebody to just like take care of it and just shut your head off, do what you're told. And I think that's like acceptance comes in your 40s of just like, don't try and figure it out for yourself. Just shut up, do what you're told, shut your head off, and you're just gonna like move on.
He sent me a message the other day. Have you been doing your home exercises? And my response was, go away. Because clearly I haven't done it. Because, now that I know what's happening, I'm like, oh gosh, but yeah. So all of that, learning to be a better
Such a
patient.
good student. Such a good student.
But I
All
thought you'd like
right.
that. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. All right, so let's switch gears a little bit because you've been
Yeah.
busy the last couple years. You were putting out a crap load of stuff there for a while. Let's go recent and then we'll work backwards.
Yeah.
I wanted to start with the recent Delphi looking at postpartum return to run readiness, and
Yeah.
if you could start just because most people don't remember this from PT school, or if you're listening and not knowing anything about research, what is a Delphi study and what is the value to having this
Yeah.
information?
Yeah. So great question. So a Delphi study is a survey methodology where you can get people to provide consensus on different topics. So, maybe in the older days, you sit in a meeting and you say like, okay, everybody, what do you think about this? And then people would vote and there'd be discussion and all of that. So without that, like Delphi methodology is a little bit more of an online version of that.
Mhm.
So the first step in a Delphi is open-ended questions, and I believe you were one of the participants
Yep.
in the paper. So, the survey asked, like especially for this one, like what are the key screening items that you would do before someone's ready to return to run, and what tests and measures, and what some different questions like that. So open-ended questions. And that's kind of the biggest bulk of the study because then the researchers sit down and see what the common themes are. So if
Mhm.
everyone said you lower extremity strength testing, right? It's not our opinion at all. It's what the experts are saying. And so here we
Right.
recruited um, people that work with postpartum runners. So
Mhm.
any healthcare professional or clinicians or like coaches, anybody who helps someone return to running postpartum
Mhm.
was included in the study. And if they were younger, they'd have to have a percentage of their caseload that was postpartum runners, like and young
Right.
guys experience wise,
Yeah.
or they had to have a certain number of years of experience to be considered experts. And so we
Mhm.
gathered this group together. They got the open-ended questions. They gave us their responses. We thematically coded it per theme. And then the second round usually is statements where people agree, strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree.
Mhm.
And so then we get that information and so we look at the items that have consensus, like everyone like strongly agreed that, lower extremity
Right.
strength should be, whatever. And then the third round, they actually get to see how people have voted. So like in a discussion room, you'd say like, oh, like I think this, and then someone else would be like,
Mhm.
well, I think I agree with that, and like
Yeah.
let's go that way. So they get bar graphs or some sort of visual
Mhm.
representation of how the group voted, and then they get to do one more round of voting. And so items usually go through 3 rounds, and
Mhm.
more than 75% go one way or the other is what we decided would be consensus. So it's
Gotcha.
a rigorous process because people have to answer and stick on with the study for at
Yep.
least 3 rounds. Sometimes they can go to 4 hours. We stopped at 3 because of clinician burden, and but that's what a Delphi is. And so it's used to generate information when not when there's no good evidence as well.
Yeah,
So
and I think that's a good point too, 'cause, I think if you were a newer clinician and not necessarily understanding, the purpose of that, and I think it's a really good point to be like, "Hey, this is what's happening out there clinically," and then we can say, "Alright, well, here's what we have in literature," which isn't that much, and
right,
then you have some very obvious gaps.
right.
So for you, what were kind of some of the big consensus things where you're like, oh yeah, that makes total sense, and what little literature we have, okay, this is can I can kind of see that, and then what other things where you're like, y'all are out there, like,
Yeah, I mean, the most important thing I think that came out of this was that it needs to be individualized.
yeah,
But, there's so much fear mongering, there's so much misinformation out there.
hmm
That was again, maybe some expert felt a certain way, but like it was taken as gospel. So I
right,
think that to me was an important thing to put out, that everybody's journey, everybody's experience is different
Mm-hmm.
and should be treated that way. And should be treated individualized versus like giving them a one fit all program.
Right.
So I think that was a really important message. The things that I was excited about is that, the consensus was that anyone who wants to call themselves a runner is a runner,
Yeah.
right? Like there's so many moms out
Love
there
it.
who say, oh, I just like to walk, jog. I'm not a runner. Like you're a runner if you want to be a runner, right? I also love that postpartum definition was like we don't know. So like if they're
Right.
postpartum, ask them the questions, even if
Right.
it's like 2 years-ish after
Yeah.
gonna miss something that could be related,
Yep.
that's related. So those are some things that like really excited me.
Yep.
Um, did anyone say anything totally out there? I think we were concerned with the timeline a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
but excited about it because it said a minimum of 3 weeks of rest,
Mm-hmm.
relative rest. So it doesn't mean you're just standing there in bed, but you're doing a few things, but
Yeah.
not. And that was exciting to me
Mm-hmm.
because we're not saying after 3 weeks go out and run a 5K, but we're
Right.
saying after 3 weeks some people may be able to start some drills or do
Mm-hmm.
some things and get ready, the
Yep.
readiness,
Right.
versus like just holding people for, I don't know, like a set amount of time because it's a set amount of time.
Right.
So that was one that I was like, okay, let's brace for this one because
Right.
what's going to happen when we say this,
Yeah.
and we said this in the paper. We were lucky enough, Rita and I, to get a BJM podcast, and I got some hate mail. Like I've gotten
Did you?
yeah, I've gotten some emails from some people who work with this population who was like, how can you even say that? And as a researcher, it makes me like smile because I'm not saying anything. I'm
Right.
reporting what the participants
Right.
are saying. I'm just gathering the information and making it readable and digestible. I'm totally unbiased in this opinion. Like it's what the people are saying. And
But
I
they
love
took it personally.
I mean, it's hard not to, take an email where someone's like coming at you a little bit and not be like,
Yeah.
but and so you have to decide how much you want to engage and disengage from that kind of thing. And so I
Yeah.
engaged a little bit, and then I was like, agree to disagree very politely. uh,
Mm-hmm.
it was almost exciting, like we're doing our job because we're putting out information that's making people challenging people a little bit
Yes.
and making people think about it.
My thing when people get triggered is if you notice you're getting triggered, step back and ask yourself why.
Right.
And like, are you so married to whatever that is that the second somebody challenges it, you're going to go full on at them? Or are you in a space and place where you can analyze and progress and evolve? And can you remember anything specific that people were like super up in arms about? Or,
The timeline one was one, right?
oh,
We
like
said
it
a
was
minimum
too fast or too slow?
too fast because we said a minimum
Mm.
of 3 weeks of rest, and they're like, oh, you need a minimum of 12 to whatever weeks, and there are definitely people who need that. Let's not get
Mhm. Oh,
wrong.
yeah.
And the paper never says anywhere that that's the be all and end all, because
Yeah.
I think that's where your clinical reasoning comes in, right? Like
Completely.
we've had so much trauma. There's still, there's bleeding, there's this, there's that, there's pain.
Mhm.
I'm not gonna make them do the running.
No.
Like if they can't even like move and do 80 their daily
Right.
activities, then you're gonna think about that. And so
Yeah.
it's just a starting point. And I was excited about that, for those that don't have anything, right?
Mhm.
Like they're functioning great. They had minimal tearing, maybe none,
Yep.
smooth delivery. They were fit right up. They ran right up to the day. They're ready to go. Why are we holding them back? Because the detraining that's going to happen
Yeah.
is so much worse than
Yes.
the little bit of like gradual starting to do some things for
Right.
them.
No, I think, and I don't know if you feel this as well, because when we had our kids, we had nothing, right? And the conventional wisdom was you don't do anything until 6 weeks other than walking. And I mean, I had 2 clients in yesterday that were both 2.5 weeks postpartum. One was her first, it was after C-section, and the other one, it was her second.
Yeah.
And I was like, we're starting things now with you that I wasn't
Right.
told to do
Right.
until much later. And yeah, I had, it was kind of a wreck and a half. And even if I'd wanted to, I probably couldn't. But like just the fact that I feel like I had so much more to overcome and still kind of have to navigate that because we didn't get started earlier. And I feel like, and this is where that like very broad postpartum conversation, I think there's a space for it because now we have these perimenopausal women that didn't get the advice back then that we're
Mhm.
giving out now. It's almost like we need to go back and give them a boot camp to get them caught up a little bit because they missed out on it. And I kind of feel like one of them. But it's it's such an interesting conversation. If you are a critical thinker, problem solver, there's so much freedom in this.
Right.
If you are a technician and you want to follow rules, it is a freaking nightmare.
Right. Right. No, 100%. And, there's no black and white in
No,
humans, in anything you do with humans.
no.
So I think that, um, got to take it all with a grain of salt. But yeah, so those were some things that um, came out of this
Yeah.
work.
I don't know. I think if you're not pissing somebody off, like, if everybody's too like kumbaya about it, like something's wrong.
Yeah, and this was the reason I'm doing all of this, right?
Yeah.
Like information we got back in the. I mean, I did Ironman in 2010, and I had
Hmm.
my kid in 2011, and
Dang.
I did nothing through the pregnancy because I was so scared because
Oh
it was
yeah.
information, right?
Yep.
I remember being on the sidelines covering a high school football game and debilitating pain, holding
Hmm.
myself up with an SI belt because I had done so much nothing that I had
Yeah.
no strength to hold up this baby that was growing in me.
Yeah.
And back pain and SI pain and uncomfortable. And like the
Yep.
second pregnancy, because I knew my body did so much, had no reason to.
Yep.
I ran right up. I think I did the Nike Women's Half Marathon by your house at 24 weeks. And then I didn't finish it because I had contractions. But that's
Oh,
like, okay, my body doesn't like this, and that's
yeah.
about it. But
Yep.
like, let's see how it goes, right? Like,
Yep.
I I know my body, I know what's happening. So that misinformation really, like, we can do better.
Yeah.
We can do better, and that's kind of how all of this got started,
Yeah.
because I was like, "We can do better," and it frustrates me, like, when I do talks, my hands go crazy because we don't have research in this population, and I understand why, right? Like, who
Hmm.
wants to do research on pregnant moms
Hmm.
and, risk something happening to the fetus, right? Like,
Right.
no one wants to have that. No IRB is gonna pass it, but Margie's
Exactly.
Margie's starting to do some of that work, so it's very exciting. But I
Yeah.
know what has no good information in this population is like the fear of what's going to happen to the mom, but
Hmm.
it's coming. Christina's doing amazing work, like
Yep.
her paper on lifting, like it's easy. It's just survey, just ask people like
Right.
experience, like how important is that to like
But we're
change
getting it out there. Yeah.
narrative, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
this was exciting to get people who work with the population and
Yep.
put it all in one place with some recommendations
Yeah.
that we could. And it's it's a lot of people that have put out individual things. We're like, let's do this together. Like we're one big team.
Totally.
We're trying to improve, the health of the mom in front of us.
Yeah.
So
No, and I feel like there's been just this lovely kind of parallel, almost like Renaissance thing that's been going on the last couple of years. And again, like understanding the history, like women getting to run, period. Women getting to compete, period. Then okay, we're gonna get to compete after pregnancy. Then okay, can we start to do stuff in pregnancy? Like it's also been like us just getting at the start line and being accepted socially. And then when we get there, then it's like, okay, now what? So like I remember thinking, oh, I'm gonna run through my pregnancy. I had zero plan for that, like zero. And
right.
when I got to 19 weeks and my SI was jacked up and my bladder was giving me all sorts of trouble, like it was a downhill thing from there. But like, had I to do it over again, like, and I'm sure that set me up for my issues with delivery, another podcast
Right.
episode, but like, this is stuff that we know now.
Right.
And there's going to be stuff that we know 5 years, 13 years from now that we
Right.
didn't know today. And that's the part that excites me. And the fact that we've got these parallel things happening in female sport, in research, I feel like there's just so much more good energy.
Mhm.
For you as a person in academia, you're educating, you're seeing more people go into this.
Mhm.
Um, what are the things that we need to look out for? Because I have seen the number of providers working with female athletes in pregnancy and postpartum just like surged the last couple of years. A lot more
Yeah.
providers working with postpartum runners. What's the positive and what's the double-edged sword that we've got to watch out for?
The positive is that there are providers, right?
Yeah.
So like you, me, we could have gotten information. We could have known what things were, treatable.
Yep.
Everything's like everything, right? Like, we could have maybe done prehab, post pelvic floor. We could have maybe talked about delivery positions that we wanted to have. There's so much. Like I
Yeah.
get goosebumps talking about this, right? Like now, like if someone said like, "Oh, deliver on your back," I would say, that's fine if there's a medical emergency, but can we try some other options?
Right.
Because the hearing that I experience is no fun, right? Like,
Yep.
so, positives are the clinicians they have something, right? We were treating postpartum women with our just experiential knowledge. And
Right.
so that's the con is I can't tell you
Right.
how biased I was. Like I
Mhm.
the PhD because I thought every postpartum woman had issues postpartum because that's what it
Mm.
saw. Like, especially them trying to get to sport. But like, guess what? The ones that were having success were not coming into my clinic.
Right.
I was only seeing the ones who A had the means and B
Yes.
were like had the energy or whatever to get to the clinic.
Yep.
So my N of, 30, 40, 50, I was like, "Oh, all of them." And so that's the hard part, right? Like
Mhm.
clinicians are going to be biased because of the patterns they see. And I
Yes.
think just reminding yourself like, "But what about the population not coming in?"
Yep.
Right. And I think that was some of the hate mail I got. Like all the people I see are, need at least 12 weeks. I'm like, maybe that's why they're coming to you. Like, why are they
Right.
choosing to find you as a coach or provider or, therapist or whatever? It's because
Yep.
something's not going right. And so those are the pros and cons, I think, now with more providers in this space.
Yep.
Um, and I think, if I could change, if I could delete social media or rule that like you need to provide the reference and you need to know how to read the reference, you know, that those are some things that I would do. Like in my
Yeah.
next life, I think like a myth busting podcast with
Mhm.
like this is what's out there. Like kind of like this paper, right? Like these are the consensus, this is what the research saying. Where do we
Yes.
stand? Um,
Yes.
because people have taken things and gone too much in either direction. And it's
Mhm.
important to be like, we don't know, right? And
Right.
so when we don't know, we're going to lean on our experience, we're going to lean on our
Yep.
expert opinion, and we're going to do the work to find out.
Right. And
So
I
that's
think we're at a point now that we're starting to get more, and that doesn't fly anymore. And you have to recognize your biases in that. And I also don't, I think for a while people are like, oh, well, there's barriers to getting, research. And, I read the abstract, it's enough, or I don't have time to do it. And that's why, I invite some of you guys on the podcast because like there should be no barriers. And here's the other thing too that I did not realize is that you guys get nothing financially from publishing from that journal. And if you just find the head, researchers email and email them and say, "Hey, can you send me a copy of your paper?" They do so gladly.
right.
So there's ways around that too, but I think there's no excuse anymore for just relying on your own opinion and being like, "Oh, well, I did this, so you can too." Like I was like, "No."
Yeah.
No.
And I'm a big person to say placebo is a very like strong thing, right? Like
Yeah.
very important thing. And
Yep.
so just the other day I was working with my para athletes and they were like, "Hey, ice bath or hot bath?" And I was like, "What makes you feel better?" Right? Like
Right.
that was my response. Like, does any of that make
Yes.
you feel better? And they were like, "Yeah, I love an ice bath." Go ahead and do it if you love it. Like,
Right.
like
Exactly.
you gotta do like you are the highest level of athlete, right?
Mhm.
I'm not gonna be like, what the research says. Like, if your
Right.
body loves it and you feel better and it's gonna help you feel like you're performing better,
Right.
that's gonna play a role too. So,
Yes.
and yeah, the evidence is mixed or not there, whatever. But yeah,
Right.
but there's a role of that too. So I think like
Yeah.
as a clinician, like you just gotta take a step back, not take it
Mhm.
personally, and really
Right.
evaluate all the different sources and what's good. I mean, a good one in this population is like the taping for diastasis, right?
Oh, geez. Yeah.
So like, again, that makes you feel better? Sure,
Great.
right? Like if it's gonna
Mhm.
make you do your PT exercises and feel good and
Whatever.
stronger, good, great.
Yep.
There's no evidence for it, but you know, all of
Yeah.
that. So sorry.
No, no, no. I totally agree. And I think some of that is um being at this long enough. You have more confidence saying, I don't know.
Right,
And this is what I can pull you from the literature. This is what I know from my own experience. I'm acknowledging your experience and we're going to make this decision together. And I think as early clinicians, we think we have to have all the answers or that there's one right answer. And that's just not the case. And I think the sooner you get comfortable with that, it's like, yes, know the evidence, know how to apply it, but it's that application, it's that, collaborative decision-making process. Like, great. And I'm not going to get in a pissing match with a patient over tape. And I'm like, if you love it, great.
right,
I think it's nasty. Would make me itch. Like, that's not my jam. But if it's working for you, wonderful.
right,
Like, I
right.
don't really care as long as it doesn't hurt you.
Well,
Or if you're doing something that you think is the right thing and it's not meshing with you, like, know that you don't have to do that.
and that's the big like problem right now, right?
Yeah.
Like you look on social media, they're like, you should go in and like it's like fear, like get yourself evaluated before you start running because
Yeah.
you all of these things can happen. Like there are plenty of people who've returned to running
Yeah.
fine, right? If you're having an issue, call me.
Yeah.
If you're not having an issue, go ahead. Like we
Right.
don't know what the like we don't know all of that information. So
Yeah.
like if you start running, this will happen. Like we don't have that
No, you don't
information.
know.
And we can help. Like, okay,
Yes.
if you're having pressure and heaviness, let's pause,
Right.
especially if it's getting worse with running, and
Yep.
let's take a look and let's see what's going on.
Yeah.
But if you're not,
Yep.
so
And
that's
that I
yeah,
love that. Like that's half the thing. Like if you kind of like, all right, is everything generally looking okay? We screen everything generally looks all right. Go do something and then come back and tell me how it went. And then those things will problem solve. Like
right,
we'll make sure there's no, glaring deficits, but we're not going to know until you go do something.
right. We're not
So
even sure if running biomechanics actually leads to injury anymore.
right.
Like everything
Don't get me down that one.
we thought, we're like, huh, but we can't really show that because there's so injury is multivariable. We cannot control for it. Like if we could, we would have solved the ACL problem years ago. There are brilliant minds working on it, right? But there's so many factors. So if you're selling a product saying you're gonna fix someone, I want your product. I want to try it.
Right. All I have to say is go back and look at the video of those 20 women who were in the lead pack of the Boston Marathon. And I had this conversation with my daughter. We were watching them. And I'm like, look, her feet go out, her knees go in, her arms, like, was it Helen O'Beary? She looks like she's like gonna die any minute. And that's her relaxed. Like, it's all over there. They're clearly better runners than I am, and they're doing just fine.
Right. And if you change their running gait, they're gonna get
Oh
slower
God.
and
You're gonna
never
screw them all
come.
up. Yeah, that's one of my pet peeves about people who have gone into pelvic floor PT without any background in anything else, and they try and fix somebody's running with, like, gait training they learned in PT school. I'm like, "Please don't." Like, "Please don't." Don't assume that you know better because 'cause you're gonna make it worse.
My gosh.
Pet
Call
peeve.
me if you need a hand.
Right.
But don't just go off and do
Yep.
things. I'll answer any email that says, "Hey, I have a patient. I'll help you."
Mhm. Exactly, exactly. Alright. At the end of every episode, we ask a few questions.
Oh,
Let's start with this first one. Book you're reading or podcast that you're listening to.
goodness. I actually follow all the Reese's book club recommendations.
Oh,
So,
okay.
the last book I read was Anita Monte's, gosh, I forget the title, but, it's a really amazing book about two women, in different time periods, and it's art history related, and it's awesome. So, and then I read a lot of smut because, like I told you,
Yay!
my brain just needs to
Me
be in
too.
somewhere. Romantic comedy. Have you read that? That
Mhm.
was Reese's
No, mm-mm.
recommendation.
Okay,
I loved it. It was it's set like almost like Saturday Night Live set, and like
okay.
how a writer and a guest on the show like their relationship. So that was a
Okay.
really nice one and a really nice read. So
Cool.
that's where I first go to be like, what should I read next? To look at the
Okay.
book club recommendations, but I tend to like the rom-com, silly, like
Okay.
stuff. So
We need a
that's
Shefali's book club.
we
Of
do.
Shefali's recommendations. I love that when there's people that I totally like, we like the same kind of style, and especially for fiction, because there's a lot of, waves in that. Like Christina Previtt's into like some whole like sci-fi something pseudo dragons, I don't know,
Yeah,
series right now. I'm
yeah,
like, girl, I
yeah.
can't, like that's too much of a commitment. I can't do that right now. But like there's other stuff. People pop up like pictures of books on social that they're reading. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna save
Yeah.
that one for later. Okay.
In the next life, I'll have a list somewhere.
You
Right
don't want another job?
right now, I don't even write them down. So sometimes I might start a book like, oh, actually, I read that. So,
That happens to me too, 'cause I get all of mine, just like the last 4 years or so. It's just easier to get it on from our local library on Libby or something like that, and it's electronically, and then if I don't finish it, I'll shut off my Wi-Fi on my Kindle so then it doesn't go back.
I didn't know you could do it. Like,
Oh,
yeah,
totally works. So, like, if you know that it's coming up and you haven't finished it, shut off your Wi-Fi, and then it won't go away. More tips from
and
I'm
the
surprised you
Kindle.
didn't know that. Yeah.
Well, I'm a new Kindle user. I just got mine
Okay.
for Christmas, so I'm
Alright.
still learning like how to download a book. And like the greatest thing was finding the Libby like app, so I can get it
Yes.
from the libraries. So
Yep.
that's exciting. So
Yep. Ours is a little more complex because, for some reason, like, I think my kids borrow from my stuff too. So, unfortunately, like, my Kindle's got, like, all these, like, 5th grade girl crap and, whatever, Minecraft, crazy
as long
things.
as they're reading, it doesn't matter.
No,
So
that's true, that's true. I just don't need, like, Princess Peony's unicorn, whatever, I don't know. Like, I don't know what it is.
help you to read it to just like get a brain. Like,
No, that's when you get to middle school and your kid doesn't love to read, and so then you have to read the book with them to make sure that they're reading it, so you ask them questions so that they make sure that they're reading it, but another podcast. Anyway, favorite activity since becoming a mom, and let's go with, like, more recent, like, like, last 5-year vintage.
5-year vintage. Favorite activity. I actually love to drop and pick him up from school. I
Oh,
think like the information sharing that happens in that window
yes.
doesn't happen in any other window.
No.
And so I can get some bits and pieces of how their day went
Yes.
before the chaos happens. I also
Yes.
do love like the few trips that I take actually because it
Uh-huh.
makes me miss them more and like takes me away from
Yeah.
the chaos. So
Yep.
I do actually, even though I'm like miserable when I'm there because I'm missing them and like miserable when I'm here because they're driving me nuts. But
Yes.
I would say like getting away is always a plus. So
Yeah, I think I heard somewhere you miss your kids more, or you talk about them more positively when you're not with them, which I think is fair. But no, I do get the daily 5th grade girl
yeah.
DL on the walk home, and then with my son, I'll drive him to school in the morning. He's a little quieter, but like if we're driving anywhere in the afternoon, it's like word
Mhm.
vomit and like random questions. And boys, they just need to be in that like space where they're not looking at you.
I mean, I got a question about like what sex, right? Like
We
right
had
from
a
school.
whole walk with the dog on sex, penises,
Yeah.
periods. I was like, "Didn't your dad cover this?" And clearly he didn't.
Well, I just think as healthcare providers, we can do
A better job.
I
Just
wouldn't
saying,
yeah, yeah. I
just
also use
saying.
the anatomy book a lot actually to just keep it like, this is how it is. So,
Mhm. Yep. No, I
so
think that's important, and now he knows about menopause, and I was like, "Yeah, and your sister's gonna get her period soon, and you might as well just get comfortable with this and not be weird, and we'll all be fine." So,
I mean, how amazing would it be if our boys, saw a girl who like maybe stained her shorts and helped her navigate out of class versus being totally
right?
embarrassed about it.
Right. There
So like,
was, oh my gosh, I don't know if you saw this or if you follow her, Jen Gunter posted a reel, it was a couple weeks ago, of this box of, like, Stay Free pads
mm,
from, like, the '80s, and how gigantic these pads used to be, and we started this whole comment thread about, like,
I would wear like the nighttime ones to school. I'd like double them up so I wouldn't have to carry all this stuff. And these things were like, they were like tiny little submarines you're putting in your pants. And like, we just all had these devastating memories of like trying to hide this stuff from our friends in middle and high school. And I'm like, if we didn't have to do that, that would be really nice.
Right. And that's the angle I took with educating. Like, your friends are going to have it and they're going to be embarrassed, and you're going to have to, just ally and support and help. And so
love that.
But also all back to say, like, that was the car conversation.
That's like what are the comedians in cars having coffee or something? We're just going to do like son conversations about girl boy stuff on the way to a game. That's going to be our version. We got to work on the title a little bit, but all right. One piece of advice, either for moms, either new or experienced.
Gosh, this is a very hard question, right?
Yes.
I think the biggest one is like, all your feelings are valid.
Yeah.
And they can change. Like, one day you'll feel a lot of guilt and anxiety, and one day you may feel like that's all normal. And listen to your body, listen to your brain, do what you need to do for yourself. So, everyone's telling you to go take a bubble bath and you feel more anxiety around taking the bubble bath, then don't take the bubble bath. Plus, like, the chances of everyone walking in that bubble bath are higher.
And when it's not your kid, it's going to be your dog.
100%. I have a picture of like 3 days ago. I finally got in the bath, and there's this golden retriever like, hey, can I come in with you? And I'm like, everyone's on sports. That's why I got in the bath.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but the dog doesn't care. So it's fine. As long as the dog doesn't get in the bath.
Right. Well, it was touch and go for a minute. And I was like, I just want to read this book on my Kindle in the bath. Like, leave me alone, dog. So
I don't need naked body and claws, and like that just doesn't sound like fun to me. All right, who is someone, and I put pregnant postpartum space, but like the space that you're kind of hanging out in right now, like who's somebody that we should be paying attention to that we may not either know or have talked to, or who's kind of up and coming right now?
Yeah, so that's an amazing question. So first person who comes to mind is Jenny Lacrosse. She's doing a lot of good stuff.
Her.
Yeah, she's going to, and she's starting the PhD route and all of that. She's amazing. Of course, we all know Christina. She's been, she's moving into a little bit more research. So I'm sure we'll see some amazing things from her.
Yep.
There's a clinician, Lisa Pirapado, who runs Ginkgo Tree. She's very active in the American Physical Therapy Association, especially the sports academy.
Yeah.
And he is doing some great work in this space and more clinician friendly stuff. And so, following her, keeping an eye on her, those are some young and upcoming clinician researchers that I think we can keep our eye on.
Love it.
Yeah, I'm sure I forgot a few people. So
all good. No, Jenny, I've known. I actually, we and I. Good Lord. She came on. She'll be on the podcast in a couple of weeks, and I've known her since she was a student and a resident, and it's just been so cool. I love people that can speak clinician and can speak researcher and can bring those two together. To me, that's like speaking my love language. So the more people that can kind of like build that community, I'm all on board. I'm like, what can I do to help? So love it.
I know, I'm reading some papers right now. I'm like, what did you even do? Because this does not read like clinician friendly at all. It's like so technical, but yeah. So yeah. And then of course, like Margie's lab is doing all sorts of amazing things. And, we can't even keep up with her at the pace
I know.
she's going. So not new, but just definitely someone who is an amazing mentor, and we can definitely lean on.
Yep.
So.
And fangirl. Totally fangirl. All right, last one.
Come to the Female Athlete Conference that they host.
2025?
Yeah, I think it's Boston again. So what does it mean to you to be an active mom?
Okay, so I've switched this question because we're hearing a little bit more like, so for you now, you study this, you've lived it, you've got tweens. Like, what does this mean to you now?
This I think is a phenomenal question because it means to be patient with myself, actually. because my athletic identity is changing faster than I can keep up with.
Mm-hmm.
So to be an active mom does not necessarily mean doing Ironmans anymore. It doesn't definitely mean doing 3-hour bike rides. Like the other day, I was like, the goal this week is 10,000 steps. I need to get up from my desk, right? Or the goal this week is just turning everything on my Training Peaks green.
Yep.
And so sometimes I'm just being more patient with my expectations of
Yep.
what it means to be active, what I'm going to accomplish. Does that mean just walking loops around the baseball field because I didn't get the run workout in that I wanted to? And instead of it eating at me all day, like just having peace with it, because this stage is just temporary, and there will be a time when I will have more time than I even imagine to exercise. So
Yeah, no, definitely. And I look ahead, I'm like, I'm never going to have a day where I'm sitting in some old folks' home and be like, oh, I wish I hadn't done that when I had the physical capacity to do so. So yeah, no, as you well know, kind of living in that sandwich generation, you're watching your parents age and that kind of stuff. Like, I think the value is so much more there. Like I have the choice to be able to move right now. I don't care what it looks like, but we're going to move.
Well, but like the more important thing is like being okay with that, right? In your head,
Yes.
and not like, this is who you want to be, this is where you are, but having peace with that. I think
Love that.
that's a huge part of it,
Yeah.
So.
And less F's to give.
Right.
That's your 40s. I love it.
I know, like you hit 40 and you're like, bring it on. I don't
Right?
care.
Like, I got nothing else anymore. It's all good. It's all good. Nothing to prove. All right. If you want to know more about Shefali, you can find her on Instagram. I'm like SHEF Christo 4 PT. You can find her there. And then you can check out the Delphi part 1. She was also in the part 2, but we're going to have somebody else come on to talk about it. We're going to have Rita on. And that's in BJSM from this year. And then also some great publications on the Journal of Women's and Pelvic Health Physical Therapy, new name.
Yeah. And the BJSM ones are all free now. Like they were
Yay.
both. So if anyone goes direct to them, they'll get them. So
okay, awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been way too long. I'm glad we got to catch up, and hopefully we'll cross paths somewhere somehow. All right. Thanks.
Thanks so much.
Did you enjoy the podcast? If so, leave us a 5-star review on iTunes and tell a friend to do the same. Are you a postpartum mom or postpartum pro wanting to know more about getting back to running after baby? Check out all my free goodies on carriepagliano.com. This podcast represents the opinions of Dr. Carrie Pagliano and her guests to the show. The content should not be taken as medical advice and is for entertainment purposes only. Always consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions.